I'm Rosie Hardy, and it's time for the questions again. I would like to say thank you very much to everybody who submits questions, and we do try and get round to answering all of them. Hi Rosie, I'd like to hear about how you deal with vine weevil in your nursery pots. Many of my containers have been devastated by grubs this year, despite applying nematodes in spring and autumn. The answer to that is that we repot our plants here on the nursery virtually every year, and a lot of stuff can be repotted twice. When we do this, we are checking for any sign of vine weevil. That is the grubs mainly, and other stages, and also adults. So we're always looking out for them all. They always will be killed. Quite often we have robins who absolutely adore the grubs, and people who are doing all of the cutting up of the plants. They will check into the centres, and what you've got to remember is they're not just on the outside of the roots, they're right into the crown, so you do have to look into the crowns and check for the vine weevil grubs in there. So we are checking before we pot up. We are then making sure that in the autumn that we are giving them all nematodes, and that is how we're doing it. And a lot of it is our staff looking and saying, right, we've got a problem with vine weevil here. But luckily over the years, while we've been really good at checking for grubs and then applying the nematodes, usually late September into October, we have got much better control over the grubs themselves. I'm not going to say you're going to be 100% free, because they are a pest that's there, but you can keep them under control. A few tips on spacing in the border would be good. I always find this difficult, especially when moving dormant plants. Thank you. Right, so my rule of thumb is if you've got a plant and you're splitting it up and making it into 3 plants, doesn't matter how big it gets. If it's a really large plant, then it's slightly different. But if you hold your plants in your hands and just hold your arms like this, so your elbows are at your sides, just gently, that is the spacing to be able to put them down onto the ground. It's much easier. I will just get 2 pots. So what I'm talking about is that you hold the containers like so, not tight like this, at this point. It can be bare root stuff as well, that sort of distance, and then you put them down at that distance, which means that you can see these plants are going to grow to that amount, so it's going to grow to there, that plant's going to grow to that amount. That gives you that gentle sort of connection of plant material together, a little bit of space around, breathing space, so that they can grow together. And then the third one would get put about here, and then you have a nice triangular effect, and you can keep on going in that way. No need for a measuring stick or anything else, just a general use, nice and held like that, not close like that. That's the mistake a lot of people make. You see the difference? If you're tight here and hold, they're this close, far too close. Gentle, out, relaxed like that. I hope that helps you. Hello Rosie and team, can you recommend a few upward facing hellebores? Also a couple where the flower stems are a bit taller than usual. Many thanks. Okay, so upward facing hellebores naturally, Helleborus niger. Lovely white Christmas rose, that's absolutely fine. Then you've got new things like the nigercors types, such as Emma and Candy Love. They have lovely big heads of flower, and all of those tend to be outward facing. You've got Helleborus Walberton's Rosemary, just a really good form. And then if you want things which are slightly taller but also have fantastic leaf, then you can't go far wrong than using the late Rodney Davies marbled series. So that includes things like Anna's Red, which was named after Anna Pavord. You've also got Glenda's Gloss and Moondance. That gives you a variation in colour, but they tend to have a longer stem and then these beautiful flowers up above, and then you get fabulous marbled foliage for the rest of the season. So those are my suggestions. Hi Rosie, I would love to know how I can fight fungal spores in my mini greenhouse indoors. I only have a small balcony, built a small mini greenhouse out of IKEA glass cabinet, fans and lights in there. How do I do it? Well, the key thing, even with a small mini greenhouse, is fresh air and ventilation. So what I am suggesting is that you need to open it up. You need to let the air get through, even if you've got fans and even if you've got lights in there. Fresh air, just turning the air around and replacing the air. Old stale air is what will give you those fungal spores. So opening up, giving it a good fresh air. The other thing to say is always give it a good disinfectant at the end of the season and at the beginning of the season to keep it nice and clean before you put things in. Make sure that any containers that you are using are clean as well. The cleaner you can make stuff before you put it into that small area, the better it is. So cleanliness and also air circulation, but it is a refreshment of air. It's not just having the fans inside. Open it up, fresh air in, then close it. That will be much, much better. Whilst you're heading into spring, here in Australia, we're going into autumn. Can I divide my perennials, Nepeta, Shasta Davis, Salvias, Pennistemons, hardy geraniums, in the autumn, or do I wait until the spring? Absolutely, it's the same rule with everything there, in the fact that as they're going dormant, you can divide them. If you want to, you can do them in the spring as well. So autumn winter division is perfectly okay for you in Australia as well. But if you need to, you can split in the spring. It's really dependent, far more with you probably, with the amount of rainfall that you're getting, so that the plants are going into moist ground. Is it safe to lift and replant my Iris germanica in the winter? They look relatively dormant, but I don't want to shock or damage the roots or rhizomes in coastal Suffolk. Well, if you're in coastal Suffolk, you're usually you are in somewhere which is maritime, so therefore you've got slightly better conditions. Having said that, we've just had a very cold snap. So that's hit everybody. So don't do it when it's frosty. It is not a good idea to lift the plants when the ground is frozen, because that is a shock to them. But certainly you can lift them and move them at this time of the year. Just make sure you are lifting when the ground is a little bit moist. Also that it is not freezing either when you lift or when you replant, and then you should be perfectly safe with them. Hi Rosie, if I buy a large plastic pot, about 160 litres, remove the bottom and bury it in the ground, will I be able to move a smallish tree, something like Amelanchier canadensis, without worrying that I'm going to cause root damage? The spot is right next to the house, or will the tree be unhappy? I don't mind its growth being stunted as a result, as long as I don't kill it by restricting its roots. Well, this is absolutely fine. I mean, what you're going to be doing there is basically giving it a ring, because you're taking the bottom out, and therefore it should be absolutely fine. Yeah, I don't see why you actually need to do that. I suppose you're trying not to let the roots go towards the house. I understand that that is okay, but they're still going to go down a bit and come out, so just be aware of that. The plant will probably be slightly restricted. That's absolutely fine. If it is in that sort of contained and stopping it, it's almost like you're putting a root barrier in. You're trying to stop it spreading sideways and allowing it to go down. Just remember, you might still need to give it some food, and you might need to give it some water as well, so that it doesn't dry out too much, even though it's going down further down, because you're not allowing sideways roots to get the moisture at the side there. I hope that makes sense to you. Are there any grasses or grass-like plants that do well in shade? Thank you. Well, there are grasses that are native to shady areas. So things like Melica alba is really good. It depends on what height you're looking for as well. Hakonechloas are always perfectly good in that sort of area. Now, both of those grasses are not going to get too tall, not much above 45 centimetres, 18 inches, but they will make lovely clumps. Things like Libertia So that works quite nicely in shady areas, and that will give you a good. And then the only other one which gives you good strap-like leaf would be Iris foetidissima. Lovely evergreen, quite broad, dark green glossy leaves on the Iris foetidissima. You do get flower on that as well, but you don't normally see the flower as much. What you see are the autumn berries. So that would work quite nicely for you also, and that will take quite dry. I have collected seeds from several perennials and annuals. How do you determine which need cold stratification, heat mat, dark or light to germinate? Okay, so this is quite a technical question, and I might do a longer video to help you with this. But basically what you're looking at is, where are these plants growing naturally? That is not in your garden. I mean, where do they come from as a native plant? So do they come from a country where it is hot and there is high light? Do they come from somewhere where it is cold? What time of year are they producing those seeds? So do they produce their seeds in the spring? Then those seeds fall and go into grass. Do they produce their seeds in the autumn and you're going into leaf litter, that sort of thing, and then the seeds are sitting there and getting cold? So those are the things that you have to look at to determine what you do with the seeds. And I think this is going to make a good video, and I will look at doing one later on. Hello, Robin. Hi, Rosie. Is it possible to recommend clematis for full shade and flowering plants for winter? Right, we've got two different things here. So there are quite a lot of clematis that will grow in the shade. There is Clematis armandii, the evergreen one, which flowers in the winter and spring. Something called Clematis Frankie, which has got lovely little heads. Most of the Clematis montana varieties will. Macropetala types will do. Tanguticas. So those are all ones that you could look at, and there are named varieties of all of those. That gives you quite a good selection. Then for winter flowering plants, there's things like the winter aconite, lovely little yellow. That is Eranthis hyemalis. Then there are Snowdrops, Cyclamen, and also Hellebores. So there's a lot of things going on through the winter months that will flower nicely for you. I would love the upright flowers of the persicaria. These are now called bistorta, but was told the roots can become thug. Is this true? This is absolutely true. Now, they can become really quite large plants. It's a bit unfortunate to say that a plant is a thug, but sometimes they have aspirations to take over, is more what I would like to say. So you can stop them from doing this by making sure that you divide them regularly. So every 2 to 3 years will keep them slightly smaller plants. The other thing to do is put them into porous soils. And that will also restrict their growth slightly. Now, there are 1 or 2 newer varieties, but unfortunately they're dwarfer, which don't spread as far. So I think the answer really is to find a variety that you like, and then just make sure you put it into those smaller you put them into porous soils, or you can container grow, and you can sink that container in the ground if you'd like to do that. But then again, remember, you will have to make sure that you water it and then take it out and look after it later on in the season. I have a fir tree that has browning in the middle. Is this normal? Zone 5, Indiana, the USA. So the answer to that is the majority of fir trees, and I don't know which ones you're talking about, but the majority of all of them will be green on the outside and brown on the inside. And you cannot, in most cases, cut back and regenerate growth. You just have to be aware that that is how they grow, I'm afraid. I have some stiper grasses that have become unruly. What and when should I be doing with them? Thank you. Right, so this depends on what type of stiper you are talking about, because there are different varieties. So if we just go for two, so if you're talking about stiper tenuissima, that is the beautiful little one that just is a flowing, doesn't get much taller than about 18 inches, 45 centimetres, beautiful soft flowing seed heads, which seeds around all over the place, and they get a little bit brown in the middle, so you take the dead out. They're not long lived, so you would remove plants every 3 to 4 years and you'd have new seedlings coming on. If it's Stiper gigantea, which is the beautiful big golden oat grass with its flower stems up here around about 4 or 5 feet, 1 meter 50, 1 meter 75, then those are really lovely plants, but they can get quite large at the base. So what you would be doing with those at this time of the year, the seed heads have probably started to fall over. You've got quite a lot of brown older growth in the bottom. What I tend to do with my own is that I will cut it right the way back down to somewhere around about 10 inches, 20 centimeters, and then just pull out all of the dead. And at the same time, so we're talking about end of January, beginning of February, you can lift it, you can divide it up. So once you've cut it down, lift it, divide it up, move it, and then that will make them much easier to look after. If it was another form of stiper, then please do come back to me with the specifics and I can give you an idea on what you should be doing with that particular variety. Thank you very much for watching, and please do subscribe to the channel.